I don't think we can unmake what we've made exactly and unknow what we know. So we can't become sort of imitation indigenous people. I think we ought to allow indigenous cultures that have thrived and continue to thrive in harmony with nature. We shouldn't be trying to disrupt them. One of the things that worries me is the Steven Pinker's view that somehow everything's got a lot better. I mean, I can't exactly see this, but one of the things that people who say this rely on, so many people have been brought out of poverty. Now, what they are actually counting is loads and loads of people who used to have no income at all because they lived in an indigenous culture. And we've taken them ruthlessly out of that culture. We have bombarded them with Western advertising. We have told them there is somewhere they can go where they can have unimaginable whatever, and they end up in slums around big cities, and they have a wage. So now they've gone from having nothing to having a lot by comparison. But actually, they've lost everything. So, I really think that point needs to be made very loud and clear. And I'm not a foe of civilization. I'm a great lover of civilization. In fact, one of the grievous things that's happening now is that we are actively, especially in the last 10 years, dismantling civilization. We're attacking all the enormously good things. There are many that are not so good, I understand, that have come out of this civilization. I'm a critic of it as it now stands. But I wouldn't always criticize all that it's done. And it is, in fact, I mean, despite what you might think if you knew nothing about history, it is the culture which, of all cultures of all time, has most fostered ideas of justice and liberty and equality, for that matter. These are not norms in most societies. And I'm not saying that they're necessarily right, actually, but I mean, they may or may not be, and they may or may not be in certain contexts. So, for example, for us to think we should go into Iraq and impose our values on a stable, ancient culture that is quite different from ours is wrong. But there is good stuff in our culture, and we've produced a wonderful justice system, we've produced a wonderful educational system, and I think those things are imperiled by doctrinaire people on right and left at the moment. I see equal troubles from left and right, and there's often a sort of mutual toxicity. So if one wing seems a bit extreme and vilifies the other go, wait a minute, and they react in a rather extreme way. And then the first lot go, see, they're extremists. And so you've got two extreme groups, and how you resolve that is much harder. It can be done. But I think that children shouldn't leave school without learning mediation skills, how to arbitrate. And another thing I think is very important is they shouldn't leave school without being taught the following skill, which I certainly remember being in my schooling, which was, I'd like you to argue on the following point. Take this position and argue for it. It may be your position or it may not. Argue for it. And then now we want you to argue the exact opposite position. Be as forceful as you can in showing exactly the holes in what you've just said. I think that is wonderful. And if more of us were like that, we wouldn't be at one another's throats. We wouldn't be making ourselves miserable through our vile hatred and anger and, disgust at other people. All these emotions, by the way, anger, disgust, self-righteousness, are terribly left hemisphere. And I see that what's happening is that we're going into an age of, and I'm not the first person to have said this or the only person, into an age of new Puritanism. And the Puritans were extremely authoritarian people, ruthless. They had no time for humor. They had no time for dance. They had no time for music. They destroyed works of art. And they set up a kind of moral righteousness which was based on certain commandments, and if you didn't follow those, then you were outcast. And we're going there right now. There are rules that you must obey. If you don't believe that, you're an infidel. If, it's all written down here. We are the right ones. You are the wrong ones. You mustn't laugh about anything. You mustn't rejoice. But I think that young people should be rejoicing in humour, in a certain freedom. I remember having a kind of joie de vivre when I was young. But I don't wonder if young people now can recapture that joie de vivre. So much of their life is to do with rules, observations. Everything you do on the internet involves following procedures and takes a very long time. It is killing to the soul. I don't mean necessarily anything religious by that. I mean, probably I do, but if you can just take it in the sense of the life in one, one's vitality, which is after all terribly important. But we're against all that. We attack vitality, we attack nature, we attack the body, we discount our intuitions. We've become much less creative, certainly in the arts, but there's evidence that actually there was a huge flourishing of creative thinking in science in the years between, say, 1910 and 1960 or 70, which produced an enormous set of changes. And nothing really, it's more that we've built on those and taken the technology much, much further. But technology is no better than our ability to use it. And I don't think we've grown wiser in how to use it. In fact, I think we've grown much less wise. So we're now very much more powerful and very much less wise. That is a destructive and dangerous situation.